This woman felt severe headache. Nurse looks closer and runs to the doctor. What started out as a bout of headaches for this Texas mother of two turned out to be something far more serious than she had anticipated. After suffering from severe headaches for more than a year, Yadira Brustro of Garland, Texas, was diagnosed with tapeworm eggs growing inside her brain, which she later discovered to be the root of her misery. Beyond the excruciating headaches, Rostro also suffered from frequent vision abnormalities, which progressed to the point where she was unable to see well in any direction at all. As a result of a surgical procedure performed at the Methodist Dallas Medical Center in early September, a total of 8 tapeworm eggs were removed from Rostro's brain during the procedure. According to Richard Mayrat, a neurosurgeon at Methodist Dallas Medical Center, they had a transparent sac surrounding them and looked a little bit like eggs. It also has a little tapeworm living inside of it, says the author. Well, on a trip to Mexico around 2 years ago, Rostro feels she may have come into touch with the parasite, but she's not been able to corroborate her suspicions. It was suggested by her doctors that the parasite might have been present in Rostro's fecal-contaminated water or food, which she had swallowed. According to Mayrat, this is an extremely rare occurrence in the world of sports. However, rather than just passing through her system, the parasite was able to make its way to her brain through her bloodstream. It was determined that the parasite's eggs were continuing to blurfrate in her brain, causing fluid to accumulate, which was the cause of her headaches. Tapeworms, also known as cestodes, are flat intestinal parasites that resemble a tape measure in appearance. Tapeworms are transmitted through the feces of humans. This type of parasite is unable to thrive on its own and hence requires a host to survive. Tapeworms can be found in both animals and plants, and they're capable of attaching themselves to and thriving inside an animal's digestive tract if they're given the opportunity. In the majority of situations, tapeworm eggs are introduced into the human body from animals through the consumption of food, which is often raw or uncooked meat. In most instances, one of the other ways that someone can become infected with tapeworms is through direct contact with animal feces or by drinking water that's been contaminated with fecal matter. Even though the vast majority of human hosts are absolutely unaware that they've been infected with the virus, there are various signs that they may be at risk. The presence of chronic symptoms such as fatigue, unexplained weight loss, diarrhea, and stomach pain should be considered seriously and may necessitate a visit to the doctor, as well as the performance of fecalist treatment. You'll need to seek medical assistance if you want to get rid of the tapeworm. Despite the fact that the mother, who is 31 years old, has made a slow but steady recovery, Mayrat is happy following the event. Rostro is relieved to learn that she survived and remains healthy despite the ordeal's traumatic circumstances. A woman who had been suffering from severe headaches and blurred vision was horrified to discover that the source of her symptoms was a huge number of tapeworm larvae sacs growing in her brain, which she'd been completely unaware of until now. She went to the doctor after she began experiencing severe headaches 9 months ago, and after they continued to worsen, she made the decision to seek treatment. In the aftermath, doctors were informed of the horrifying discovery and immediately performed an operation to remove the parasites from a brain. A few days later, I began to experience headaches on and off because of my eyesight impairment. It was frequently difficult for me to see clearly. In my previous life, I'd never considered the possibility of having something lodged in my head. Rostro made a statement. Doctors discovered that Yadira Rostro, age 31, had sacs of larvae living inside her brain. During their research, they believe she acquired the larvae while on a trip to Mexico 2 years ago. Her agonizing headaches continued to worsen as the 8 tapeworm eggs that had nestled themselves inside her brain matured and thrived. As a result of the fluid accumulation, she would suffer from excruciating headaches for the rest of her life. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Richard Mayrat, describes them as having a similar appearance to eggs and containing a clear sac inside of them. It has a small tapeworm living inside of, says the narrator, as he went on to explain. The parasite was most likely acquired by Rostro through the consumption of food or drink that had been contaminated by fecal matter. It so entered her bloodstream, and subsequently her brain. The larvae were taken from Rostro's brain as doctors were filming the procedure, which may be seen in the video. It's a real source of distress. In the course of treating a Texas woman for blinding migraines, doctors discovered at least 8 tapeworm egg sacs in her brain, which were surgically removed by a team of brain specialists. According to authorities, a Texas woman who had been suffering from painful migraines for months was surprised to learn that she had tapeworms in her brain, which had stuck inside her brain and set many eggs around the base. She'd been suffering from the symptoms for months. Doctors discovered the stomach-churning discovery after the 31-year-old Garland mother presented to the hospital for treatment after complaining of recurrent headaches, nausea, and dizziness over the preceding 9 months, according to the hospital's website. According to Dr. Richard Mayrat, a neurosurgeon of the Methodist Health System in Dallas, given her age and her characteristics, I suspect that it might be a tumor. Although surgeons initially suspected that the source of their patient's pain was widespread, after consulting with an infectious disease specialist at Methodist Dallas Medical Center about the case and recommending surgery, they discovered that the source of their patient's pain was significantly less prevalent than they had previously suspected. When the woman's brainstem was discovered behind her skull, they discovered between 6 and 8 sacs of larvae and removed them immediately, Mayrat stated, emphasizing that the worms were discovered behind her skull and had to be removed quickly. He also stated that she was anesthetized face down, and we made an incision at the base of her skull, removing part of her skull, separating the cerebellum, and we were able to see the sacs at the base of her brainstem. Right then and there, he continued, by using a microscope, we were able to meticulously remove all the sacs in a matter of minutes. Following a trip to see family in Mexico 2 years prior, Mayrat believes that the woman contracted the painful parasites that caused her to begin losing her sight during that trip. She may have eaten food that had been contaminated with fecal matter, according to Mayrat. According to the doctor who described it, instead of going via her gastrointestinal tract, the parasite traveled through her blood and ended up in her brain. As reported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 1,000 people in the United States are admitted to the hospital each year as a result of tapeworm infections. Mayrat, on the other hand, had never seen anything like it before until he discovered a tapeworm inside a patient's brain. The doctor describes his reaction as follows. I was taken aback. It was clearly out of the ordinary, something I'd not seen in a very long time. But I'm pleased we were able to get to her in time and preserve her life. In his report, Mayrat stated that the woman was doing well following surgery and that it was not anticipated that she would suffer any long-term repercussions. In a similar vein, doctors were taken aback when they discovered tapeworm larvae thriving in a brain of a woman who had been suffering from migraines for years before being diagnosed. Doctors in Australia were caught surprised when they discovered that a woman who had been suffering from migraines for years had tapeworm larvae living in her brain, despite the fact that she'd been suffering from splitting headaches for the preceding 7 years. She'd only been prescribed migraine medication. The year before, the woman would suffer from terrible headaches 3 times a month, prompting her to seek medical attention. A week after experiencing a severe headache, she realized that something was seriously wrong with herself. An MRI scan of her brain revealed what seemed to be a potential tumor, prompting doctors to refer her for further testing. As reported by CNN, when surgeons performed surgery to remove the cancer, they discovered that it had been mistaken for a cyst containing tapeworm larvae, which they had to remove. Tapeworms are parasites that live in the intestines of humans and other animals. Infection with tapeworms can occur when a person consumes undercooked pork or comes into contact with tapeworm eggs. An article on her was published in the American Journal of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene, which included a case report. She was terrified when she saw the photographs, which were published on September 21st. They showed how much space the larvae had taken up in her brain, and it was terrifying to see. It was believed that she was the first person in Australia to get neurocystic cirrhosis, despite the fact that she'd never been outside of Australia before. The development of larval cysts in the brain as a result of neurocystic cirrhosis has the potential to cause neurological abnormalities in the affected person. It was assumed that the woman had unintentionally swallowed tapeworm eggs that had been released by a carrier during a routine procedure. She was able to make a full recovery and did not require any further medical attention. Globally, according to the World Health Organization, tapeworm infection of the central nervous system is a significant cause of epilepsy across all continents. The publication goes on to state that transmission of the virus is preventable, with the most prevalent cause being eating undercooked food, particularly pork, drinking water contaminated with tapeworm eggs, or practicing poor hygiene. According to the findings of the study, The disease is endemic in many parts of the world, including African countries, Asian countries, and Latin American countries, where animal husbandry practices are common. According to the findings of the study, pigs raised for human consumption contract T. solium after ingesting feces from humans who have contracted the disease. It all comes down to this. While neurocystic cirrhosis is an uncommon disease to contract in economically rich areas such as North America, Central Europe, Japan, and Australasia, it's more common in countries where pork consumption is prohibited by the religious or societal custom. Typically, NCC is diagnosed in immigrants or returning travelers who have spent time in endemic regions and have returned to their home nations. This article highlights the peculiar characteristics of both the clinical presentation and the epidemiology in order to enhance clinicians' awareness of the necessity to pay close attention to the danger of infection arising in non-endemic nations.